And here we go again, another episode of Under Pressure, and I'm so excited about this episode because I'm joined with Lad Akins. Thank you so much for being part of Under Pressure, my good sir. I know you had a very long drive to get here, so first off, I do appreciate you going all this way to come see me and be part of Under Pressure.
Hey, thanks, Carmine. It's great to be here with you.
So I always open it up to my guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. So who is Lad?
Probably depends on who you ask, and you'll get different answers, but we can start with my background growing up in Georgia and then getting into the dive industry. And I started in the dive industry at the very bottom, picking up cigarette butts out of the yard where we handed out equipment and handing out equipment and working my way up to being an instructor and a captain.
So is that how you have to earn your keep then? They have you doing the grunt work?
Well, you know what? There's advantage to that, or a benefit, I should say, not advantage maybe, but I think everybody should have some experience, working in the low levels of industry. And I certainly did.
Yeah.
And I think it benefited me in the long run.
Absolutely. So when did you fall in love with diving? So what made you gravitate towards that?
I grew up in South Georgia, and we lived for part of the time I grew up, we lived on a lake. And I loved water skiing and fishing. But you can only hold on to that rope so long when you're water skiing. And in the breaks in between, I would put a mask on and just float around and look at what was down there. And that really hooked me.
Yeah. And it had to be a big step up, though, from diving in the lake, right? Because you said there's only so much rope there. And then when you go out into the ocean, how much of a drastic difference is that?
It's huge, not only in the vastness of it, of course, the ocean, as far as you can see, there's no land when you get offshore, but also in the amount of life underwater. I mean, lakes are great, but when you look at the diversity of a coral reef compared to a lake, it's order of magnitudes greater.
Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about your diving experience, some of your diving adventures, but I also want you to talk about, of course, reef. I want to talk about special projects and how you got involved with all that, and what's the thought behind that?
Mm-hmm. So as I was saying, I started in the industry as an instructor and then captain, and then I started seeing or wanting to know more about what was going on underwater, not just looking at it, but understanding it. And that kind of led me into the conservation side of things. And Reef was founded in 1990 as a way to engage divers and learning about what was going on underwater, but also reporting those sightings that they made to the scientific community. There are only a few qualified scientists out there to make these observations and conduct studies. But if you take the vast number of divers that are out there looking at this stuff every day and give them the tools and the knowledge they need, they can report those sightings that are extremely useful. And that's kind of how Reef started.
Yeah. So by sightings, what do you mean? You mean sightings just to help with conservation or new species, or it's kind of the whole gamut?
Yes and yes, and probably another yes in there as well. Sightings of what they saw, so different species of fish, but also occurrences, what's going on, anything unusual. And it started much very similarly to what birders do. Audubon has a great program where they involve people in going out and recording what birds they see and submitting those observations to a central database. So we did the same thing with fish, but then it just kind of blossomed into looking at artificial reefs, looking at invasive species, looking at national marine sanctuaries and protected areas.
So by artificial reef, because I always wanted to know what that is. So that's is it man-made or something maybe like a ship sunk, and then all of a sudden it came from that?
Yeah, both actually. Natural reefs, of course, are natural formations of animals that grow together and form these structures underwater. Artificial reefs are things that we put out, and it could be a ship, an airplane. It could be a concrete modular structure. All of those would kind of fit the definition of an artificial reef.
So if you wanted to create your own reef, you could put, like what you said, a concrete module down there, and then just naturally things would start to happen, even though you give it an artificial push?
To some extent, first of all, you couldn't do it or I couldn't do it, but a state or county entity could do it.
Got it. Yeah, I don't want to give people
right.
The idea that they could just go out dropping planks and stuff like that into the ocean, that's probably going to do the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish.
Right, and there are permits and paperwork and all that. But an artificial reef can be created and put out to enhance marine life, give it places to shelter and and things to start growing on. What's interesting is some of the studies we've done show that even though artificial reefs can enhance marine life, it still doesn't function exactly the same as a natural reef.
Really?
Yep. So you can't duplicate what Mother Nature does. You can do some things, but you can't replicate Mother Nature.
Huh. That is very, very interesting. You think once that reef's created, it's like, yeah, all the fish will come back. So you find that sometimes a certain fish won't go to the same place that it would normally if it was a regular reef and stuff like that?
Exactly, yeah. Certain species are attracted to those structures and others are not. And same thing with organisms. You know, a reef isn't just about fish, but you have crabs and shrimp and lobsters and sponges and all these other things. And
on the other side of that, have you ever seen stuff in an artificial reef that you never see in the natural reef?
I wouldn't say never, but yes, to answer your question, some things are attracted more to artificial reefs than a natural reef. Some of the big pelagic species that are usually open water will come into a natural reef with lots of bait fish on it, whereas on a natural reef, you know, those bait fish may be more spread out and it's not as advantageous for those big predators to come in and find a meal.
Yeah. And I also saw you were an aquanaut. Explain what that is. So you were down on the bottom of the ocean for what, X amount of days, 8 days?
Yeah. So people know astronaut.
Yeah.
Of course, you're up in space. An aquanaut is the same thing. You're down below. And not to get too much into the physics of it, but when you go underwater, you're limited by the amount of time you can stay and still come straight back up to the surface. But when you live underwater, your body becomes saturated at that level and you can spend almost unlimited amount of time diving. So the amount of work you can do and research you can do is huge compared to if you're diving from the surface and had to go right back up.
Like, I wouldn't say I'm a claustrophobic person, but just the thought of being under the water like that for that amount of time is just, it's one of those things that all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know. Is that a fear that I now have?
Well, there were some aspects of it that could conjure up a little bit of that. You may not be old enough to remember Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and, you know, the images that conjured up of living underwater and looking through these bubble windows at everything going on out there. And pretty much that's what we did. We had a capsule underwater, 60 feet deep, out on Conch Reef in the Florida Keys, and we lived down there for 8 days.
So you also discovered some new species of fish, right?
We did, not on that expedition. That was a separate time and project in Mexico where we discovered new species of fish. But I do want to get back to the aquanaut thing at Aquarius.
Absolutely.
It's really interesting that NASA also uses that same facility to train their astronauts. It's easier to train them here on Earth.
Throw them in the ocean before they send them out to space to train.
Exactly, but a lot of the same characteristics of, you're restricted in how long you can be out and the environment you're in, and the neutral buoyancy is very much like being floating around in space. Yeah. So NASA uses that same facility.
So is your next step to go to space?
Oh, I wish. I do know some people that have done both, gone to space and saturated in Aquarius.
And you said, though, when you're under the water, your body gets saturated as opposed to in space. You won't have that same benefit, though, right? Because it's a little different. Obviously, it's different.
Space is actually the opposite. So underwater, you have more pressure on you. You are under pressure.
Look at words, that. Right? You get $15 for that.
Okay,
plug. Thank you so much.
You're under pressure. And in space, there's an absence of pressure. There is no pressure. So still an issue to contend with, but two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Got it. And I do want to talk about how you go about discovering a new species. I mean, like, what are the steps? Because you could just see a weird-looking fish or a weird-looking marine animal and be like, well, that looks like a new species. So what are the steps? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so the first step is knowing what you're looking at. I mean, just like you said, you see something that's unusual. It doesn't ring a bell as to what is that. So getting good images of it, detailed notes about where it was, what it was doing, et cetera, and looking up through the scientific literature to see if there's anything that matches that description. And if you can't find anything, then the next step would be collecting it. And often that requires a permit. In fact, almost always it will require some type of a permit to go collect a fish for scientific examination. Once it's collected, you do these very detailed counts. How many fins does it have across the back? How many scales down the side of the fish? What do its teeth look like? And what formations? And you compare that to other things that have been scientifically described to see, again, does it match anything? If it doesn't, then you have to write up all of your results and submit them for a publication in a scientific journal where other scientists will review that. And they'll say, oh, no, this is wrong. This other fish is exactly this same thing.
That's called what, peer-reviewed?
Exactly, peer-reviewed, yep. And that's how science works, which is pretty cool, that you may think you have a new discovery, but the other scientists have to review your work and then approve and say, yep, this is new.
Have you ever gotten to that point where you're like, I think we got something new, and then they're like, no.
Not that far down the line, but a little ways down the line of seeing something that had a completely different color pattern than I was used to seeing and thinking it was something new, but then no, it wasn't.
Well, because I know for a fact, now let's take it out of the water for a second, like black panthers, they're not actually a species. They're not a species of black panthers. They're just a very dark, like jaguar or something like that, right? I don't think there's an actual black panther species, if that makes sense. So if you just would have naturally saw that, you'd be like, oh my God, what is that? That's something new. It's like, oh no, that's actually just a different coloration of a species we already know.
Yeah, and now it's getting even more intricate, I guess, with DNA analysis, because something may look exactly like something else, but when you look at the DNA, it could be completely different. So you can have a new species that appears identical to something else, but the DNA shows it's not.
That is very, very interesting. And that's why DNA is the way to go. If you can get a DNA sample, that's how you know the surefire way to be like, okay, this is a new species or it's not a new species. And the elephant in the room always, of course, when it comes to conservation, will be global warming and climate change. How much of that truly is something that we're doing as opposed to just maybe the natural course that the Earth is on a certain cycle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge.
I'm sure it's dependent on who you ask.
This is like, you can't even do this in one segment. Just talking about that, this is a big, big issue. Most people will agree that the data show the changes taking place right now are happening way faster than you would ever see in a naturally changing system. Not that things wouldn't change naturally. Yeah. I mean, we've had ice ages before, and the Earth changes over time. But right now, it's happening so fast that it just defies any naturally occurring explanation. This has got to be from us, or at least in large part due to us. And to me, the biggest problem with that, I mean, we know we have an effect. Everything from what we eat to what we do to
just fishing
everything.
In general,
we have an impact just like other animals do. But the biggest thing is that in a naturally occurring change where it happens over time, other organisms have time to also adapt. And when it's happening so quickly, things can't keep up naturally. I mean, we may be able to, but all these other things that take hundreds or thousands of years to evolve and change and adapt don't have that time.
Yeah.
And, when we talk about the coral reef, the last 2 years have been the hottest on record by a large margin. I mean, it was 2 years ago, it was 90 plus degrees in the ocean in Key Largo for over 5 weeks. I mean,
it's almost hotter in the water than out.
Yeah, it was. And the corals and the fish, and they just can't handle it.
And I think a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but some people would see like, oh, it's only a degree or two different, or oh, it's only a foot or two higher. They don't understand how drastic that difference is. I mean, it's the difference between freezing and not freezing, or boiling and not boiling. So, I mean, 1 degree can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and another thing people may not realize, it hasn't been discussed to the extent that I think it should, is that things expand and contract with temperature. If it's hotter, things tend to expand. Put that heat into a massive ocean, and even though the ocean is only expanding a little bit per cubic meter across the entire ocean, you get a lot of expansion. So aside from, the glaciers melting and adding to sea level rise, you also have just the thermal expansion of the oceans that's going to cause sea level to go up.
It's unfortunate when you sometimes view humans as invasive species, you know, where the invasive species in the ocean, and unfortunately, more times than not, we're fudging it up. And then that leads me to a invasive species that you were definitely involved in often, the lionfish. One, they're very delicious. So the more we can catch them and put them on a plate, I'm about. But what got you going down that road with lionfish?
Yeah, well, the first part of your question, I agree. I hate it when people take things to an extreme and say, we're the problem. We have to, we shouldn't be here. That's BS. I mean, yeah, we can do things better and we should. But yeah, all of this, humans are the big issues. That's not.
I mean, we do a lot of great things too.
That's right. That's right. But lionfish and invasive species is something that definitely was caused by humans. I mean, lionfish are naturally occurring, but not in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Super popular in aquariums when they're small.
Yeah.
But they grow quickly and they eat everything. So over the years, we don't have the exact pinpoint release, but people have set their pets free into the ocean.
That's the biggest dirt moment for most humans. It's like, oh, wait, here's water. It probably belongs there. Boom, tosses it in.
Yep. And who knows if it was accidental or purposeful, but it happened. And it was due to us releasing these things. And these lionfish were able to get together and start reproducing and just spread through an area that they have not evolved in. And the same thing we were just talking about, the ability of other organisms to adapt takes a long time. And when you introduce a new predator like lionfish into an ocean that it's never been in before, just the natural controls aren't there. And the population's exploded. And and the way I got involved was through the reef program where people were keeping track of what they were seeing. And these lionfish sightings started coming in and increasing. And then it was time for okay, now what are we going to do about this?
So how much of a problem are they still?
They still are a big problem, particularly because they are found in areas that we can't really remove them. Super deep water, beyond diving depths. And also areas people just don't go. Where we are removing them on a regular basis, the numbers are down and kept in check, and they're probably not having a huge impact. But in the rest of those areas where we're not,
So at what depth is it too deep for just normal scuba gear or someone to dive down to that depth?
The normal recreational dive limits are 100 feet.
Okay.
I mean, you can go deeper, but it requires special equipment, special training. And even then, you don't go much deeper than that.
Yeah.
When you start getting down over 130, 150 feet,
the body's not going to be able to handle.
Yeah, weird things start to happen with your mind and your body. So basically the top 100 feet of water is where we're able to access the lionfish. And they've been documented down to 1,000 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they know what they're doing, and it's just like you need checks and balances. And as you said a couple of times already, it's just like there's nothing to keep them in check. If only, well, that wouldn't make sense. I was like, if only you can get the predator of the lionfish and then introduce it here. But I was like, no, that just is a whole nother problem. That's like the lady that swallowed the fly, right? And then she ate the spider.
No, exactly. People have brought that up. They say, why don't we introduce what eats them in their native range? But then you got 2 invasive species.
Oh, that's absolutely insane. And I just want to touch back when you said, 20,000 leagues under the sea?
Yeah.
What about that diving equipment back then? Have you ever put that on? I know you probably didn't dive with that, but it was one, big tube and a big ass metal suit. Like that had to be terrifying to go down to those depths with that and basically just a hose.
Yeah. To be honest, I have not done that. There's a very good friend of mine, in Key Largo that actually introduces divers to that. You can go try it out.
That, huh?
Yeah, in a very calm, protected.
Yeah, I'm sure
area.
you're not that deep either.
And it's actually called Jules Undersea.
Oh, really?
The place.
Bringing it back.
But but I've used other equipment. Most of what I've done has been just regular scuba gear. But some special equipment.
So you'd say you have over 10,000, 15,000 dives under your belt?
Yeah, I don't keep track anymore, but somewhere in there, yep.
Can you tell me a couple of those holy shit moments? Like the times you were diving and you were like, that was a close call.
Well, let's start out with the Aquarius.
Okay.
Again.
I as an aquanaut.
Yeah, as an aquanaut. So you go down and you start your first dive early in the morning, about 7 o'clock, and you do about 4 hours underwater before you surface into the habitat. And once you do that, you're stuck there. It takes 17 hours of a slow decompression before you could come back to the surface.
Wow.
So coming up to the surface is it's not an option.
Okay.
I mean, you'll die.
Yeah, okay.
So we surfaced. We went in, early in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we surfaced into the habitat on September 11th, 2001.
No shit.
Yeah. And the time we were underwater, saturating and getting started in our mission, the Twin Towers were hit and the Pentagon, and we had very limited communication with the surface. And it was for everybody in this country, it was a crazy time. But being underwater, saturated, not being able to come up, not knowing if we were at war or what was going on, that was a pretty
that sounds like the
time.
start of a horror movie. It really does. You're underneath the water, World War III breaks out, and you literally are under the water, not knowing what's going on. It's like, I guess we're riding this out.
I think we have the idea for a new book.
Yeah, for real. Right.
I'll co-write with you.
Start writing it now before this episode airs.
Okay, great.
So we'll make sure we get ahead of it.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's wild. I remember 9/11. I was in New York at the time. I was freshman year in high school. It was crazy because I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, and the first 2 weeks of school, the teachers were on strike. So every other day we would go to school, and it'd be a half day. So it was all just chaotic anyway. So then they brought us in the gym, and I'm like, oh, what now? They're going to tell us, hey, you're getting released at 11:30. And then they told us a plane hit into the World Trade Center. I was like, it's kind of weird. They didn't say like the extent of it. Then it was like, as we're in there, they're like, another one hit. And then my buddy started freaking out because his mom worked in the World Trade Center. Luckily she was not there for work, but I knew so many people. One of my coaches, football coaches, passed away. He was a firefighter that went to the building. So yeah, it was it was crazy being on the surface and then kind of knowing bits and pieces, even though I was young. So for you to be basically without contact, that is terrifying.
Yeah. And knowing that we couldn't just surface. And who knows? Wild things go through your mind. Are we going to be a target down here? Who knows? But yeah, it was a pretty crazy time for everybody.
And you can't surface because of the bends, correct?
Correct. Once your body absorbs a certain amount of nitrogen at that depth, you can't just come straight up. You have to do a very long, slow decompression, they call it.
And you said at certain depths too, your mind can almost play tricks on you. How mentally tough do you have to be as a diver to just know if things are starting to seem off, to have that knowledge and just that experience to be like, okay, I know this is not the way things are supposed to be, but I just need to be calm and kind of get through it.
For most people, recreationally diving in shallow water, that's really not an issue. You have to pay attention to things, of course, watch your air, but you have a gauge just like a gas gauge on a car. So you know what you have left. There are little things to pay attention to. But as you go deeper, coming up quickly, if there's any kind of issue, becomes a problem. So you'd have to do a slow, controlled descent. So thinking ahead, and just like you're saying, acknowledging what's going on and what might be an issue and how to deal with it. All those things have to go through your mind.
Yeah, because the things that go through my mind, and I'm sitting here in a chair on dry land, is that like if a marine animal was coming for you or trying to attack you, it's like you can't even try to get to the surface quick because you're better off kind of just hoping for the best at that point, right? Have you ever had an experience with that? Like maybe a shark got a little bit too aggressive or a little bit too friendly?
Yeah, I think you've spoken recently to a really good friend of mine, Andy Dehart.
I have, yes, sir.
So back to the lionfish issue, Andy and I worked really closely together for many years, and we did some studies on lionfish in the Bahamas. And we were live capturing these venomous lionfish and then tagging them underwater. We put a physical tag on them so they could be identified later, and we could track the movement and the growth of these fish. But also we put acoustic underwater tags. We had to surgically implant them into the lionfish.
In real time, like under the water like that?
Underwater, on the bottom, doing surgery.
And stitching them up?
And stitching them up, yep. And if you've ever seen Andy's hands shaking and see him with a needle in close proximity to you, that can be a very scary occurrence.
I feel like I don't have the steadiest hands, and then you're underwater just surgically putting stuff in fish. That's cool.
But. Yeah, with venomous spines. So one person would hold the lionfish, and the other person would actually do the surgery or insert the tag. So we worked really closely side by side doing that. And then to get back to your shark scares, we were doing this on the west end of the Bahamas, where there are some sites that the sharks are fed to put on shows for the divers and create those diver interactions, which can be really great. But when you're trying to handle a fish underwater and the sharks want to know what's going on, and then you start doing surgery and a little bit of blood comes in the water.
It's like a dinner bell.
Oh, it was pretty crazy. We had probably a dozen Caribbean reef sharks circling around right overhead while we're trying to do surgery, and coming within a foot or two of us, and we had work to do. We couldn't just say, all right, sorry.
How both of you guys can walk with the balls that you must have, because seriously, holy shit, dude. I've been like, get me back to the surface. You're over here just basically crocheting a fish's belly to, oh my goodness.
Well, I think
the things you do for nature.
I think what happened is that Andy and I would look at each other, and neither one of us was willing to be the first one to chicken out. So we both just stuck it out. And
that's the best thing ever. Us guys are just like that. It's like, hey, you're not going to one-up me. It's like, who's going to blink first?
Yep. Oh. Those were good times.
I didn't even know that lionfish also it could be venomous just from the touch.
The worst, they have 13 super long spines across the back, called those dorsal spines. And they're like a hypodermic needle. 4 or 5 inches long and super sharp. And each one is packed with venom. So
what kind of damage can that do?
Oh, incredibly severe. Even just a tiny poke can be like excruciating pain.
Okay.
So
is it possible to be fatal, or
there have been no known fatalities from a lionfish sting, but I have some good friends that said they wish they would have died.
It's that painful.
Oh, it can be severe.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole thing. If you're diving, you come across a lionfish, they stick you, all of a sudden you might start to panic, and then it might not have been directly from the venom, but the things that led after that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but those were some good days. Andy and I have had a lot of adventures.
Yeah.
Also in the Bahamas, we were at Stewart Cove, who has a big dive operation over in Nassau, and they were sinking a new ship, a shipwreck. And so we were with Stewart, and he was out there as part of the sinking in the U.S.
What does that mean? I'm sorry. Like literally just sinking a ship?
Sinking a ship to create an artificial reef.
Okay, so we'll go back. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
To enhance the fish population and provide an attraction for divers. Cool. And they were sinking this big ship. In the U.S., when that happens, you can't get within a mile of that sinking. The Coast Guard, maintains a perimeter, et cetera. But we're in the Bahamas. So Stewart is pretty close with the boat, and our plan was after the ship went down, we were going to dive it soon after. So we had all of our gear, and Andy and I looked at each other again, and it's like, hey, Stewart, you mind if we jump in and take a look before the ship actually hits the bottom? Because they had opened up all the seacocks to let water come into the ship slowly. And he said, yeah, just don't get squished. So we're down there diving directly underneath this big ship as it's slowly sinking. And then finally it sank while we were underwater. It was pretty
That must have been
intense.
cool to see. But you guys live recklessly. That is just all of a sudden be like, hey, I think it's getting kind of close. Maybe we should both. It's like you both give each other the go ahead. It's like, okay, let's move out of the way of this ship.
That's kind of what it was, but we didn't actually move out of the way. We were up near the bow, and the stern of the ship sank first. And it kind of pulled the anchor line up out of the water that we were holding on to.
Oh, damn.
So we let go and looked at the ship that had gone down stern to the bottom first. We started swimming towards it to check it out, and then the bow started dropping towards us. So we both bolted to either side. And the strangest thing about it is on land, something that massive, when it comes down,
it would make a noise.
Exactly. And both of us, as this thing came to the bottom, covered our ears, and there was no sound.
That's funny you said that, because I was going to ask that question. I was like, hey, this might be a silly question, but I was like, did it make any kind of noise? Because I was talking to Andy about that. There could be these big ass fish and stuff. You don't hear them, and that is also just terrifying. Not necessarily thinking, if a tiger's behind you, you're going to hear it until it's too late. But like, there could be a massive 22-foot great white shark right behind you, and you wouldn't hear it.
Yeah, that's true.
Not hear it.
I never really thought of that.
Now I know if a sinking ship it hits the bottom of the ocean and no one's around to hear it. It doesn't make a sound. It doesn't make a sound regardless.
Right. Exactly.
Regardless.
Even if you are there to hear it.
It doesn't make a sound. So I also want to talk about, I saw something on your Instagram. What was the trash derby? What is that? I thought that was a really cool thing, but I wasn't just looking at it. I was like, do you just go around collecting trash, or it's more just like educational purposes so people could know what to do and what not to do?
Yeah, it's a little about, well, it's not a little about, it's a lot of collecting trash, and then there's great educational components that go along with it. The particular derby you're probably thinking about just happened recently in the Keys.
What was it, the third annual?
The third annual. Mm-hmm. And it's put on by an organization called I Care, which is in Islamorada. It stands for Islamorada Cares. But it had multiple components. The part we were involved in is taking divers out and cleaning up stuff that doesn't belong there, cleaning up trash, rubbish, broken up lobster traps, old anchors that have been lost, fishing line, trap line, things that impact the ecosystem, but you would never know that it's there unless you're underwater diving.
It's like a beach cleanup, except you're under the water.
Exactly. And part of the problem with helping protect and preserve the underwater environment is that most people don't see what's under the surface. You look out and you see the top of the ocean, but you don't know what's under there.
Yeah.
But by diving and being able to go down and look around and see what's there, you can see all of these impacts that we have. I mean, everything from, plastic bottles, that have sunk and are on the bottom to, like I was saying, trap line, fishing line, anchors. So the Trash Derby is a great event that mobilizes and organizes divers to go out and remove trash, and then their prize is awarded for how much you bring in.
Yeah. Has anybody tried to cheat in one of these events? Like bring their own trash and just skew the results?
That's a great question, but
just have like a treasure trove of trash and just be like, hey, look at this.
One thing I can tell you for sure is that if it's been underwater for any amount of time, it's going to stink.
Okay.
Yeah, with all the stuff that's growing on it, algae and other things, when you bring it out of the water and the sunlight hits it and starts decomposing, it's going to smell.
Okay.
And I think anybody that tried to cheat, they would have to season their trash somehow. Which
now we're giving them the playbook. We're giving them the playbook.
Yeah, I guess.
And pun intended, going overboard for that. Yeah. The other thing I thought about when you were like on the surface, it looks great, but underneath, it's a mess, and that's why you have to clean it up. That's the same way I fold clothes. So my girlfriend will have the clothes on the couch, and then once they're gone, she's like, "Where are they?" And then she'll go in the closet, and they're still there.
The same pile is just moved out of sight.
I just moved it. It's like when you're younger and your parents tell you to eat your vegetables and you just spread them around. It's like you didn't really actually do anything. You just spread around the problem.
Yeah, I see.
So that happens since it was the third annual, so that won't happen again till next year. But I'm sure there's similar trash derbies, right?
Yeah, it's great. The dive industry is very proactive. Aside from being just an incredible recreation and a great sport and super fun, most divers are very environmentally conscious as well. So they pick up trash that they see all the time.
Yeah.
But these events also happen all over the world.
You'd imagine they'd want it to be as clean and as natural as possible. You're going there. You don't want to be in a toxic wasteland. I mean, it makes no sense.
Exactly. And I've even seen similar things on land where some of the beaches put out trash bags or buckets for people that want to, when they're walking the beach, just pick things up to help clean it up.
I mean, that's a big part. Just do your part. You don't have to be a diver. You could just see trash. That's why it just bothers me when people litter or just anything in general. It's like, come on. You couldn't have found a garbage. You couldn't have put that in your car for a little bit and then taken it out. It's like, because, someone thinks, oh, that's not that big a deal. But you know how many not that big of deals there are? They start to add up.
Yes,
and that goes back to the 1 degree thing that I talked about earlier. People think, oh, that's not a big deal. Over time, it becomes a very big deal.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings because I feel like we all should do our part, just like you're saying. And when we're able to, help out. But we need, even if everybody did their part, we need bigger and better solutions because we can't just keep picking up trash or plastic. We have to find ways that stuff, either we have alternatives to plastics or some way of, I don't know, just better ways of doing things rather than trying to fix a problem after it's already, once it's there.
And I think one of the bigger problems were when it came to plastic, like plastic straws and trying to ban the plastic straws. The alternative was paper straws. And when I tell you, one of the most useless pieces of anything ever. And I hated making fun of it. I got in trouble. I was on a broadcast one time and I was at a Sandals and they were very conscious about it, with the plastic straws, and they gave us paper straws. And I went on this whole big, 5-minute rant. I'd be like, once you put this paper straw in, you have about 10 seconds until then it's useless. I was like, I get it. Let's get rid of plastic straws, but we have to have a better alternative because no one was going to use this if it gets soggy and then it's useless. Like you said, you need better things in place to make a difference.
Right.
And you can't just have a quick fix that doesn't actually work.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for this too, but I agree 1,000% with you. I hate paper straws. I mean, they stick to my tongue.
Yeah.
What
about the trees? How do we get that paper? We're also going after trees.
But to me, the bigger thing, I mean, I get what people are trying to do when they ban a plastic straw or something, but that's the most insignificant, probably the cap on your water bottle right there. It's got more plastic.
Yeah.
And we have plastic everywhere. It's in every single thing. So why are we focusing so much attention on a straw?
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at the bigger issue. What can we do that's not plastic in general? Come up with a better plastic.
Yeah. I think they had I'm going to mess this up, like avocado straws, right? Isn't avocado, they made some kind of straw out of some skin. Maybe it was a fruit, and it's actually pretty good.
Really?
I don't know.
I I haven't heard of this.
I wish I had a fact checker right now to just say, but I think it was something like that. And we could be onto something because it was actually really good. So what do you think one of the biggest, the other problem is that the United States, we're pretty proactive when it comes to trying to save the environment. There's other countries that we really can't do anything about that unfortunately are not doing their part and just making the problem worse, right?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Yeah, it's a global issue. I should also say there are other countries that do better than the U.S. too.
Oh, really?
Sure. But yeah, in general, we just need an alternative to plastics.
Yeah.
To eliminate that problem.
So you think that's the plastic in general is just the biggest issue?
No, but that's the one we're talking about in a second.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest issue?
I don't know if there is a biggest. I think there's a lot. I think the one that's going to sneak up on us and hit us the hardest is going to be just this warming trend. And not just that it makes things warmer, but all the other effects, the effects on crops, the effects on hurricanes and rain, rain and flooding events and, freshwater reservoirs. And it's just going to change global weather patterns. And we all rely on that in one form or another, whether it's too hot outside, to sit out and have a decent lunch, or whether, the rivers are flooding because of these massive rain events caused by more moisture in the air.
And it goes back to what can we do to mitigate that, or at least slow it down as best as possible? And that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
Maybe the $1 trillion question.
Yeah.
Get up it. But
and not just what can we do, because there are probably some good things we can do that are out there, but are we going to have the will to do those things and maybe suffer some of the pain in doing something new that we're not used to, to get us past this or to help minimize the effects of this, increase in temperature?
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to make sacrifices.
I don't either.
That's the biggest issue. So, but Lad, this has been an absolute pleasure, my good sir. So is there any information you want to get out there, how people can contact you, all the programs you're involved in?
No, not really. I think the biggest message I would put out is for people, we're here for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself, love life, and get off the couch, quit watching TV, go do something and enjoy it, and, take part in this world.
And I know you'd have a lot of time to make fun of me. That's why I'm bringing this up at the end of our episode, but I've never been to the Keys. Not one of the Keys. I've been down here for 18 years. I kind of briefly told you about that. You looked at me like I had 9 heads. I need to get out there. I need to get down there, I should say.
Absolutely. And not just the Keys. The Florida, the U.S., the world, get out and do things. The Keys are beautiful. They have some, the underwater world of the Keys is incredible. And the mangroves, great paddling, paddle boarding. There's so much you can do. but there's stuff you could do everywhere.
Yeah.
Just get out and do it. You know,
I like that. Don't sit on the couch. Don't let life pass you by.
That's right.
Because you said we're here for a short time. But Lad, this was awesome. And make sure you check out Lad, everything we do here on Under Pressure as well. Check us out on all social media. You can listen wherever you consume your podcast. And until next time, but Lad, thank you again, my good sir.
Thank you so much, Carmine.
It's a pleasure.